Welcome to the Leadership and Love podcast. We will cover leadership, mindset, personal development, and sales and marketing. You will experience thought-provoking conversations with both nationally and internationally recognized leaders. Our goal is to inspire you and deliver actionable items that you can implement that are going to help you accelerate your growth. Get ready to discover the magic and the power when you lead with love. You are in for a real treat today. A very, very dear and lifelong friend of mine is here with us today, Jen Loving. Let me give Jen a brief introduction and then we'll get going. So Jen is a best-selling author of 9 books, international business coach, a speaker trainer, and has generated over $25 million in sales. That's right. We're going to be talking about sales. This is a person you want to listen to. She's been featured on Inc.com, ABC News, and Times Square, and has spoken on stages to over 10,000 people. With 2 decades of business experience, she has built her first 5 businesses to 6 figures each, all in under a year, and all in different industries. That alone, Jen, is amazing. She's now helped over 1,000 entrepreneurs build their businesses, with many reaching 6- and 7-figure revenue. But she is most proud of founding her own international nonprofit, Handing Hope, which brings comfort and smiles to children battling cancer in 13 states and 4 countries around the world. She's the mother of 4 incredible children. Yes, I've met them all. They are amazing, including 22-year-old twins. You need to contact Jen and hear her laundry story, but we won't have time for that today. So please help me welcome Jen Loving. Jen, thanks for being here today. I'm really excited, humbled, and honored that you took time out of your busy schedule.
I'm so happy to be here, and I love leadership and love, so it's perfect.
I know you do. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. One of the things, just so those of you listening, Jen and I have actually worked together at this point. I've lost track, but probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 years in an organization called Engaging Speakers. We do some joint coaching for people, and I really have I'm blessed to have a very personal relationship with Jen, both on the business side and personally. And so she really brings so much to the table. Jen, what I want to start with first thing this morning is, what would you suggest to our listeners about a powerful tool that you recommend to your clients to exponentially grow their business when it comes to marketing and sales?
I don't think there's a better strategy to grow your business for marketing sales outside of speaking. And the reason I say that is because everybody knows people do business who they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster way for people to get to know, like, and trust you than to hear you speak. And so I think that is by far the most powerful strategy that an entrepreneur can learn to do.
And so what has your results been that you've seen, both for you personally and your clients, when they speak?
The key is that you need to know how to do speaking, because a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs will get opportunities to speak, but they'll tend to want to speak about their process. And I always talk about the importance of speaking about principles, and I can share a little bit more about that. But what's possible for me, like what I've done and what I've helped many other people to do, is to 100%, you can add at least 6 figures to any business in the next 12 months through speaking. I 100% believe that. I don't think there's a business that can't successfully do that through the power of speaking. Some businesses could have 100K months, some could have 100K days with speaking. I've literally spoke for 20 minutes in front of a room full of only like 60 people and made over 100K in 20 minutes or less. So that's what's possible. And that might shock some people that you can actually do that, but it is really predictable. It's really repeatable, and it gives you that feeling as an entrepreneur or business owner that you can control generating leads, making sales, growing your business, and feeling like that. There's like really nothing better than to feel like you can choose how much you grow your business. You can feel in control of that. You can set a goal. I want to make X amount of money this month, and feel confident that you'll do it, not just hoping and waiting for referrals and all that type of thing.
So that's a great point, Jen. And so for those of you listening, that may seem a little far-fetched or unbelievable, but I can tell you that Jen's the master of this, and I've watched her do it on a number of occasions. The other thing, Jen, I'd like to talk about before we get into the specifics of like what that speech should include, I'd like you to talk about the importance of having clarity around your target market and who's in that room when you do that presentation.
Absolutely. So you want to start with the end in mind. You want to know, what do you want to have happen at the end of your talk? And clearly you need to, like, so let's say you're a coach, for example, and you sell a particular type of service. You're going to want at the end of that talk for that people in the audience that are your target market to want that service. But you also need to ask yourself, who are those people I want in the audience? Like, who buys my product? Who buys my service? So once you know who buys your service and your product, like what is your business designed for, then you know who those clients are, and then that informs who your audience would be. Ideally, that's your ideal target audience, is the people that buy your services now or your product now.
And so I want everybody that's listening to catch what Jen just said because she dropped a golden nugget. The way you make a bunch of money in a room is by being in the right room, right? And we've talked about this on some of the engaging speakers presentations and podcasts and that kind of stuff. And so you don't want to be standing in front of a room full of Girl Scouts if you're a coach or any other business owner that's really not your target market. So Jen, can you talk about some of the things that you've used in your speaking to really get clarity on how to make them unique, the person speaking, and also how to attract those clients that want to do business with them?
So when it comes to speaking, like you said, Louis, it's absolutely essential that you know who your audience is and that you have a talk that's designed to attract your ideal clients. That's number one. And the second piece is you want to create a title that is going to really resonate with that target market. They're going to be like, "Ooh, I want that," whatever that is. And so for me, for example, I do business coaching and speaker training, like you mentioned. And one of my talks for the speaker talk that I have is speak your way to over 100K in 60 minutes or less. So if I'm in for a room full of entrepreneurs and business owners who want to learn about speaking and they hear, wow, you can make 100K in 60 minutes or less, that's going to draw them in and be like, ooh, I want to hear about that. And so that's what you want. You want to create something that is tied to the result that your services or your products bring. And that is going to be tied to your title. So once you have your title and you're clear about your outcome and your audience and all of that, the next step is you want to build your talk. And so your talk is you need your intro, the body of your talk, your close. And as far as your body of the talk, how do you figure out what you're going to speak about? This is huge because a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners get invited to speak, have opportunities to go and talk about their business. And most of them feel kind of drawn to want to talk about their process. They want to give like 5 steps to this and 4 steps to that. And they want to get into the how to's because they want to give a lot of value. And it comes from a really great place. It comes from, wanting to give value and wanting to help people. But what happens when you give process in your speaking is you're going to, at the end, get a lot of, oh my gosh, thank you. That was great information. You're going to get those compliments. You're going to feel good. And then you're going to get confused because nothing's happening and growing. Your business isn't growing from it. So you're like, that felt really great. I got compliments. Why are people wanting to have conversation with me and work with me? And that's because you did the talk based on process. You gave away so much information. And so you filled them up. They got what they wanted. They said thank you. They appreciated it. They left. And then you're standing there feeling like that was enjoyable, but my business. So there's a way to change that, but still feel really great, love what you're doing, enjoy the process of speaking, but then really get results. And what I mean by results is if you're speaking and you're not getting these type of results, then that means there's adjustments needed to the talk. So the results that you should have as a minimum, if you're in front of your target market, which is a really great point, Louie. If I'm in front of a room full of Girl Scout girls, and I do my talk, none of them are going to be interested in using speaking to grow, maybe the cookie business, but like that's not going to be interested in that, right? So that's important. But the way that you figure out what your principles are is you go back to that big result, the title that I talked about, and you ask yourself, if this audience of people never got to work with me and they only got to hear me speak, what would I need to tell them? What would be the principles? What would be the 3 to 5 things that they would need that person in that audience, if there's people in the audience that could be great for me, what would they need to know, believe, have, do, understand, or embrace? Like, use any word you want to get that big result. That's going to help to start to inform what are the principles you should be talking about. So, for example, I've built 5 different businesses with 6 figures in less than 12 months. All of them got to, to that and, really quickly 6 figures, and all of them got to 7 figure revenue. And I have this whole blueprint for entrepreneurship. But when I speak, I don't teach that blueprint or speak about that blueprint. I speak about you must follow a proven blueprint for success as a principle. And I talk about it, like I explain what the entrepreneurial blueprint is. I do a little exercise that highlights how powerful it is. I talk about the problems if you're not following a blueprint. I share a story that really proves how powerful it is to follow a blueprint. And I ask a reflection question. So I have a little structure in terms of sharing the principle. But if I were to sit there and go through, there's 6 pieces of this blueprint. There's like a framework and there's 6 different pieces. There's lots of items under each framework piece of those 6. If I were to go through all of that, like let's say I made all my points about each one of those pieces of the blueprint, all that would happen is that I always would be like, oh my gosh, thank you. That was amazing. Thank you for all that information. And my business would not grow. But if I talk about it as a principle, like you must follow a proven blueprint, and here's what the blueprint is, you share the why and the what. And the how is shared when they hire you to work with you, because then you give them the how. That's what you're getting paid to do, is to show them, teach them, bring them to that, through that. They're going to have to do the process, but you don't teach that or do that on a marketing signature talk. The signature talk is meant to market your business, draw people to you. And so 90% of the audience should come into your email list, and at least 25 to 30% should come onto your calendar at the talk. If you're doing a talk that's really strategically designed for speaking to grow business, that's the kind of results that you can predictably, repeatedly see. And I have seen people have 100% of the room want to have a conversation be on their calendar. I've had people get on waiting lists to want to work with people as a result of, doing their talk and sharing this type of work, this type of, structure. So if you're not seeing that, then that's because the structure and like how you're delivering the talk and the content, what you're doing and the strategy is not it's not ideal. Let's put it that way. Like you could get some, like you could get onesie twosies, but you're not going to get this like repeatable, predictable outcome every time where you can like decide, I want to make X amount of money this month and I need to do clearly what I need to do, and you can make it happen. Like you won't have that sense or feeling of like control over your business in that way.
So, Jen, you're full of great information. So she's dropped a couple of golden nuggets that I want the audience to catch. First one is that she's talking about how to strategically talk. And she used the term signature talk. So I can tell you that in my background, I'm a keynote speaker, and Jen is a signature talk expert. There's a big difference. So when somebody hires me, they're paying me to speak. Jen will go to the room and speak for free, but she's not speaking for free. She's converting people in that room because her signature talk is set up to convert those people. And she drops some numbers that should be a great gauge for you. If you're not getting the majority of that room into your email list, and now Jen, so I'm going to take a moment here because there's 2 things I want you to expound on. One is how do you get them into your email list, and the other thing is stories. You kind of skimmed over stories, so I'd like you to talk about both those if you would, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the strategic design for speaking is you want to have at least 50% of your talk stories. Could be your personal story, and then every one of your content points that are your principles, you're going to have a story that's going to prove the principle. What happens in that story is you're going to be highlighted, your expertise is going to be highlighted in a classy way as you tell the story. I teach 6 stages of storytelling when you speak. There's lots of ways to tell stories when you speak, but I like the version I teach because it does a really nice before and after type of um, demonstration that's inspiring. But so every single point has a story, and you could even close with a little story if you want to. But stories are what change behavior. Stories are what people will remember. Stories are what are engaging. Like they're what is going to cause people to feel something and to be inspired. And so there's no better place to teach than inside a story. So you don't have to get up and like do all this like information teaching. You can actually teach way more effectively if you craft it in the story, what you want to teach.
And and so on your principle, let me interrupt real quick so that the audience gets this. So the story she's talking about, can you go into those are specific client success stories you're telling based on each principle, correct?
Exactly. So I'll give you a real quick example of what this looks like. So when I do my speak your way to over 100K in 60 minutes or less, one of those principles is you must have a strategic design signature talk. And so I'll spend a little bit of time explaining, like we're doing now, what is a strategically design signature talk? I'll talk about the difference between process and principles, the power of stories. And then I'll talk about the problems. If you don't have a strategically designed signature talk, then you won't have that sense of control. I'll go through all of that. And there's strategy built into those two things. One, the first one is explaining it, and the strategy there is make sure the audience is clear what you're talking about, what you mean, and that there's no question of what you're saying. The second one is the problems. If they don't do it, wakes up the people in the room that are having that problem, like, ooh, I'm having that problem. I need to pay attention to this. Like, this is why maybe why I'm having this problem. Then the story is what's going to prove the point. So one of the stories I share is a woman named Sam. I met her and she was a mental health therapist when we met. And she is still is today. And she was exhausted as a mental health therapist. She was seeing every single type of mental health client you can imagine, from suicide to divorce to grief to depression, anxiety, like all the things. And she was going around speaking everywhere. Like she was going to high school, speaking on suicide prevention, going to women's groups, speaking about divorce care, going to men and women's groups, speaking about grief. And she was creating PowerPoints and different talks. And it was not causing her business to grow. She wasn't getting any leads from speaking. And she was exhausted by the end of the day with the work that she was doing. So I went and asked her about her core genius. Like I did some questions and got to the core of what her core genius was. And what was it that she did measurably better than other therapists? And so you can answer yourself this question, because I think the core genius is a really important topic we could talk about, Louie, but you can ask yourself this question based on what you do, and what is it that you do measured better than others, that you do it and it comes really easy for you. If they don't work with you in what you do, somebody else, what would they maybe miss out on? So I was asking Sam some of these questions, and what we discovered is that her core genius was that she had this ability as a therapist to put an end to anxiety. She said, all the colleagues in my field say, oh, you can't really put an end to anxiety. All you can do is teach people how to cope with it. And she's like, but Jen, I know I put an end to it. And I said, that's amazing. Like, let's work on creating a talk that's really designed around helping women put an end to anxiety. Let's build your business around that. Let's fill your client load. Just all women. Like, how would that feel to have all women that have anxiety every day? That's what you're doing every day. You show up in your office and your whole caseload is women that have anxiety. And she like lit up like a Christmas tree. She's like, oh my God, that would be amazing. And she was going to feel energized by that. But then she almost told herself she couldn't do it. She was like, well, I don't know if in school they say that you have to help everybody. And I said, well, this is your business. And the reality is, you know how many women in the world have anxiety and would like to put an end to it and don't want to just learn to cope with it? If that's your gift, build a business around that. Like that's super powerful and super exciting. And so she started to like buy into the reality that she does have that freedom to choose. It's her business. She recognized that this would be something that would really energize her. She wouldn't be tired at the end of the day like she was, because this is what she was really good at. So she had an opportunity to speak in front of 100 women in about 90 days from the time we started working together. And at the time we started working together, she was making about $3,000 a month. And so now remember, she did a lot of speaking and didn't get any results. And so now she's on stage with 100 women in front of her. She does her talk. It's called Dare to End Anxiety. She does the talk, and while she's at the end, when you were asking about the lead magnet, making the offer and all that, the conversion piece, she watched 50% of the stand up and like flee to the back of the room. And I'm sure people have seen that, where speaker and like a bunch of people run to the back of the room. That was her experience. And her knees started shaking on stage. She like couldn't believe what she was seeing. And by the time she got back to the table, because I had taught her as part of the conversion is to have like reserved on her calendar spots that would be on her calendar ready to be able to do these Dare to End Anxiety sessions. And so when she went back there, she had 18 spots on her calendar that were on this piece of paper, and all 18 spots were filled. And then she had 27 additional women ask if they could be on a waiting list, to work with her. And she could not believe that. And so that month she made over $10,000, and she had not done that before. And by the end of that full year, she had made over $250,000. And then we had to create on-demand courses because she was one person with this really long waiting list. It's 3 years ago, and she still has a waiting list today. And she ended up creating on-demand courses called Dare to Anxiety so she could help serve people that were waiting on that waiting list to work with her. At least they can get started in some of the principles that she taught. And that second year, she made over $500,000. And then the third year, she made over $1 million as an entrepreneur with the Signature Talk and really feeling and having a full caseload all the time of women that have anxiety. And so that totally changed everything. Knowing her core genius, building a strategically designed signature talk around her core genius, and speaking from here and not here. And when you're speaking about your core genius, that's what happens. And when you follow that strategic design, it's such a powerful process and experience for the audience and for you as a speaker, because it's like you're standing there having a conversation with people that you want to serve and help and ultimately love. You're loving what you do, and you're doing it in such a way that it's like a gift of love to the people that you're serving. So when it comes to that second question you asked about the conversion piece, like the lead magnet and the offer, the lead magnet is something that I see a lot of speakers miss. And that is, they'll just maybe they'll offer a strategy session or a discovery call or something like that. But there really should be two things, and they're gifts. One is a gift of a resource that's a digital gift that would be a solution to one of the problems or one of the principles that you talked about. So, like for example, like when I told you when I do that one talk I do about helping entrepreneurs add at least 6 figures to their business in the next 12 months. It's one that's designed for entrepreneurs about business growth. I give away my 100K business blueprint. I give away what the blueprint is. I don't give away the how of like how you do all those things, but I give away the entire what. And I only give that away when I speak. It's not available on my website. It's not available anywhere else. It's a special gift I give away only when I speak. So you want to have something that people are like, oh my gosh, like they want it really, they're drooling over it. Like they can't believe you're giving it to them for free. You want to be a go giver. If you've never read the book by Bob Berg called Go Giver, 100% recommend that book, because that will help you to make a really good decision about the lead magnet giveaway, because it should be something super generous when you're speaking. So you give that. And then the second piece of the conversion is you give away a gift of your time. Now you don't call it a discovery call. Oh, it's 30 minutes, but you don't even say how long it is. You don't get into those kinds of words. You name it something that's related to the result that you bring, the title. So for Sam, for example, she had her talk title was Dare to End Anxiety, and she gave away Dare to End Anxiety sessions. And when you give away an offer like that, people are like, "Ooh, I want that," versus a strategy call or discovery call or consult, or those kinds of words. Like that doesn't have the same impact and power when you're delivering that. And then strategically, the way that you position these is whenever you're doing your principles, when you finish a principle, you want to ask the audience, how are they doing with whatever that principle is? You just talked about all that stuff. You explained it. You talked about problems that they don't do. You shared a story that proves it. Then you want them to reflect. How are they doing with that? Like, do they know the entrepreneurial blueprint? Like, for example, for the blueprint one, or do they have a strategically designed signature talk? Like, let them internally answer that. Then when you get to this place where you're giving away the lead magnet or giving away the offer to have that session with you, then you can refer back to those reflection questions. You could say, remember when I asked you, do you know what the blueprint is and what your next step is in your entrepreneurial journey? And if you weren't really clear, you weren't 100% sure, then this gift of this blueprint is for you. Or if you're giving away the offer, you remember I asked you, do you have a strategically designed signature talk that gets you 90% of the audience into your email list and at least 25 or 30% onto your calendar? If you didn't answer yes to that, then this Speak Your Way to Over 100K session is for you. So that's how you start to like position those gifts. And that whole thing works magically. And it is when people say, well, you can't sell anything, you can only make like a lead gen offer or something like that. That's what this qualifies for. But I can tell you, like what you said, Louie, that is how you monetize, because people come onto your calendar and then you have a conversation, which is essentially the consultation. That's your time to talk with them, discover what they want, what they need. Are you a good match? Make an offer. If they're not a good match, then you don't make an offer. And that's how your business grows. But when you're predictably getting at least 25 or 30% of the room onto your calendar, then it's just a matter of like working the conversions of like, there's like little speak your way to more profit exercise I like to do. And you do those little conversions in that formula and see like so much money I can make with speaking. It's enormous. And then you start to really believe like, actually, I think I could have a 100K day, or I could definitely have a 100K month, or there's no doubt I'm going to add 6 figures to my business this year doing this. So that's the power of all of that.
So, so for our audience listening, so a couple of things. When Jen said you can come from here or here, she had one hand on her heart and one hand on her head. So that's what she was talking about, and she was really talking about coming from your heart. A couple other things that Jen talked about that I want you guys to grasp. The first one is that she said something really, there's a golden nugget. She's speaking in a room where the event planner, the host, whoever put the event together is saying, you do not have a green light to sell anything. But she'll make $100,000 in that room and not have sold anything and kept her integrity in place because she didn't sell anything. She gave away a free offer, the lead magnet, and she gave away a free session with her about 100K business blueprint, whatever she's calling it that day. And again, now you'll notice she's got a couple different offers based on a target market who she may be standing in front of. But this is the power of talking. Now, the other thing, Jen, I'd like you, and because you've got great experience in this, I want you, for our listeners right now, I want you to eliminate the thought that, yeah, them, but not me. And Jen, so what I'd like you to talk about for the next couple of minutes is this truly works for any business, correct? And could you speak
Yeah.
about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I specialize in working with service-based businesses, and I don't have a business I can think of that this doesn't work for when it comes to speaking and using this strategy. It's super powerful. So let's say, so you give me, what do you think is a common, Louis, a common value of a new customer to one of your listeners? Like, what is the average value of a new client or customer coming into somebody's business?
I would say in today's world, I would on the people that are listening to this, I would say probably somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 a client.
Okay, so let's use 2000 as an example. So let's say we're going to do a small audience, like 50 people. So if you're using the strategic and you're making, $2,000 from a new client coming, that you sell comes into your business and their value is like about $2,000 to your business. And we're using the ratios that we were talking about. So you should have like 47 out of those 50 people want your lead magnet. 45, something like really close to 50 will want the lead magnet if it's a really good lead magnet. And then we're figuring like 30% or 25%, the 25 to 30% are going to come onto your calendar. So like if we have 50, we're talking about maybe like 15 people, right? Come onto your calendar. Now the question is, how good is your consultation and your conversions? And that's across the board different for everybody, right? So ideally, I think a super healthy conversion ratio is 1 out of 2. I work with people and they say, oh, they get 70, 80% conversion. I say, okay, that's awesome. That is a signal that you could raise your prices at this point if you wanted to. Some people get a 1 out of 3. I still think that's good. 1 out of 4 is acceptable. If it's worse than 1 out of 4, like if you're getting a 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 in speaking, because speaking is, remember, this is not a cold lead. This is people that got to know, like, and trust you through this process because you're aligned, you're speaking from your core genius, like you're inspiring, like all the things are happening. So you should have like more of this is like a warm, or at least like very warm lead that you're talking to. So if it's not at least 1 out of 4, then I would say you're probably needing to look at your pricing or your consultation process. Like there's something that you can do to improve that because you should be able to depend on 1 out of 4. So let's just go super conservative and say 1 out of 4. And so if we're having 15 consultations and we're closing 1 out of 4, that means you're going to have, 3 to 4 clients, right? Depending on, how close you were. So let's say you only had 3 and you get $2,000 per one. You just made $6,000 from that one talk in front of a really small group of 50 people. And like if you did just 2 of those a month, that's 12,000 a month that you would be making. And if you do that every month for the year, you could see how you're like way over 6 figures. Now take those same numbers and let's say you made your average value of a new client for you was 10,000 or 20,000, in those same numbers, and then you change the conversion ratios. Like if you are closing 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3, you can see like how fast, if you're closing 1 out of 3 and you have 15, that means you're going to close 5. And let's say 20,000 is your average value of a client. There, you just made 100K a day. Like that's how this actually happens with only 50 people in the room. Very, very doable.
And so,
And that-
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just going to say again for our audience, it doesn't matter what you do. You could be a plumber, you could be an electrician, you could be a builder. Now, keep in mind, whatever your business or your industry, you want to make sure that you're standing in front of your target market. So, if you're a plumber or an electrician, as an example, your target market isn't going to necessarily be business owners, but if you get in front of builders, property managers, homeowners associations, those kinds of things, that entire room would be your target market. And those associations and those groups have meetings and conferences all over the place. And you could show up as a keynote speaker to do your signature. I'm sorry, not a keynote speaker, but do your signature talk, not sell anything in the room. You could go to and you would be speaking for free for the event planner. But at that point, to Jen's point, you could make tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in that presentation. Jen, when you were talking, I'd like to go into the story a little bit more. When you're telling stories, those stories are specifically a client that you worked with that had a success implementing the principle that you taught them, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So you're choosing stories that are really going to prove the whatever point you're making. And so let's say you're a newer business and you don't have a lot of great stories. You could use other stories, but it won't be as powerful as your own personal client story. But it's definitely a strategy. Like you can share celebrity stories or other stories that you know of and use that to prove the point. But whenever you have your own client stories, you want to replace those as quickly as possible with those stories because it will highlight your expertise in classy way. So there's two strategies when you're sharing stories. You're gonna be inspiring people to want to work with you if it's your client story. But then you're not really like telling it like a testimonial. It's like a very classy, seated way of talking about the power of that principle. Like the audience is going to catch the fact that you help them to achieve that. And that's built into those stages. Like I talked about the stages of storytelling. I teach 6 stages. And so stages 1, 2, and 3 are before working with you. Stage 4 is all about working with you. And stage 5 and 6 is after working with you, the results. So it's like this before and after, really powerful kind of structure to that. But so there's that piece, but then in the other pieces, you're proving the point. And so the story is a really powerful way to prove the point, even if it's not your client story, but at least you're using a story to prove a point because stories are what people will remember. It will help change behavior. And even though it's not your personal client, it won't be as powerful, but it will still really work. It just won't work as powerfully when it's, not your client story. But I just still encourage you to still tell the stories and, find a story that's going to really prove the truth of that point.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I'd like to touch on something else too that you mentioned, and I'd love for you to share what would be your advice to our listeners on improving. I'm big about keeping track of your closing ratio, right? And to your point, if you see 10 people and you're closing 3% or 30% rather, 3 out of the 10, it's really easy to grow your business. You just improve your closing ratio. You don't need more leads. You just get better at closing. You're going to grow your business. So what would be some advice you'd share with our listeners on how to be able to close or convert them to being a client?
Yeah, so that's a process, right? So it's from, before
No,
you even
stop,
get on
stop,
the
stop. Wait. So I'm sorry to interrupt. So everybody, I want you to, she keeps talking about a blueprint, a process, and she said predictable, right? So everything Jen's talking about, and her and I are both huge on this, it's a process. You do it the same way all the time. That's how it becomes predictable. That's a gold mine in itself right there. If you're willy-nillying your sales presentation, a speaking presentation, your closing, if that's all willy-nilly and you don't have a process on how you do it, pay close attention. Go ahead, Jen. I'm sorry to interrupt, but thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great because it is a process and it's something that you just everything you said is absolutely true. You want to consistently do it the same way every time. It's not just like what you do, right? So when I do a talk, if I'm in person, I have these little half sheets which they I put it in every chair and I don't care if there's 100, 200 people, I don't care. It's like it's the I have proven this over and over again. QR codes, all of that, the results that you get are significantly less. Paper still works the best, hands down, over and over again. So I have these little half sheets that, I make that offer in front of the room for that free gift of the lead magnet, which is their digital resource. I can give away thousands of those for free, right? Might have paid something to create it, but then you just give it away, give it away. That's the lead magnet that brings people into your database for future sales. So we capture those on the sheet. There's a spot for their name and their email. And then the second thing is we capture if they want to have a session, and that's the consultation essentially, but we name it a session name, something that's tied to their big result that they bring, and they put their phone number on there. And I always ask for their cell phone. And so I tell them in front of the room when I'm talking about this that, I hold up the sheet because they all have the sheet. I'm like, I pick up the sheet, talk them through, like, if you want this, sign, do this. If you want the offer, for the session, do this. And so at the end, and I tell them too that at the table over there, I have already reserved on my calendar times that I have open that we could leave here today already having this session booked. We don't have to try to go back and forth and figure out a time. So if one of those session times works for you, please grab that because then we'll be able to leave with that session already on our calendars. And the people that run up to do that are your hot leads. Okay. But then
Amen, sister.
all those half sheets are your warm leads. So you do those, right? So then what I take, I just did a talk last night in Chicago. And so I took my, all my half sheets. I took the one that has all the sessions on there. And then when I got up early this morning, because I didn't get home till like after 10, I got up this morning, I sent all of the people that had booked sessions with me today and tomorrow, I sent them right away. And I told them I was going to do this in front of the room. I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a text, and on that text is going to be a link for my questionnaire. And I would love for you to fill out this questionnaire before we talk so that I can make the most of our time together when we speak. And I believe that is a really critical piece of doing a consultation to help you get a yes. Because if you can get a bunch of information about this person before you actually get onto a Zoom or a call with them, then you're going to get to know them a lot more. You're going to be starting at a place where, based on what you do and the problems you solve and the results you bring, you're asking questions and creating a questionnaire that's going to help highlight the things that you want to know before you even get on the phone, so that when you're on the phone or the Zoom, you can be more targeted and more strategic in your questions so that you don't have to be on that call as long. You can be way more professional and intentional. You're not going to miss things because you didn't ask about it. So there's a pre-questionnaire that you have already thought through and created that's the same. Everybody fills out the same thing. Then on the Zoom or on the call, you've actually have a bunch of questions that may or may not be asked based on what they shared in the results of that questionnaire. And I personally choose to not do a consultation or give that session if they don't fill out that questionnaire, because for me, it's kind of like the checking the box that this is somebody, because it's a gift of my time, right? Like they're honoring my time as well by being willing to fill out that questionnaire so that I can serve them the best. So those are like the steps from like the talk piece all the way flowing into what was already prepared. I come with those half sheets ready. I come with those dates and times reserved on my calendar ready. So there's the pre-questionnaire that was already designed that they're getting, and then I'm getting that back and I'm reviewing that in preparation for the call. Then I do the call, and I just do a 30-minute consultation. Some people do an hour, whatever time you need that that you need, schedule that with them. Some people could do less. And then in the call, you're really seeking to find out, what do they really want? What do they really need? And you're deciding, are you the fastest path for them to reach that? And that's what you want to communicate in the consultation, if that's true. If you determine that this is not your ideal client, like, for example, we've been talking about keynotes and signature talks. For me, somebody that wants to be a paid public speaker, they want to go into corporations, get paid. They're not interested in growing a business through speaking. They just only interested in going into a corporation, getting hired to speak, and that's the business. They want to just be a keynote speaker. That's a totally different structure and design. It's a bunch of stories, like 7-minute stories, all linked together for the most part. It's very story heavy, and there's not any like marketing strategy to grow your business. You're just fulfilling for the organization, and they tell you basically what they want, and you're not coming in there, and there are some cases, like for example, where I have been paid to do my signature talk as a keynote, but that's like kind of more the bonus stuff, right? But I feel like as a core, if somebody shows up for me that way, I tell them I'm not your best coach for that. And I will refer them to somebody that is what they do. They teach them how to create keynotes, like you, Louie, teach them how to create keynotes, get it paid, because that's what you do. And that's one of your expertise areas. And I'm not going to try to, serve somebody that's not loving them well, serving them and giving them something that's subpar from what they actually really need. So the no offer is what I feel like a really, really huge thing. And I can tell you, when you do that for people, you refer them to somebody better than you, your integrity, your referrals, the appreciation, all of that, like your reputation, all of that, like, will skyrocket, because you are in alignment and you're serving people. And that's truly like being loving, and it makes a difference. So, and then follow up. The last piece of a consultation, Louis, is follow up. Like, if you get on to the end of your consultation and you've made your offer, and there's a whole structure inside, and we don't have time to go into all the details of like what actually happens on the call, but there's, flow to that. But at the end of that call, and you're making your offer, and they decide they want some time to think about it, then what you want to make sure you do is you schedule a 15-minute follow-up on that call. Say, totally understand you want to think about it. Can we go ahead and schedule a 15-minute follow-up so we can circle back? And, I don't know how much time you would like to think about it. Would you want, can you share with me what you're thinking? I just leave it super wide open, because sometimes they're like, I'll talk to you later tonight, or I'll talk to you tomorrow. You might be thinking next week, but they're thinking, so let them say. And then after that follow-up, if there's more follow-up to do, you need a follow-up system. You have to track, because the fortune, you've heard this said, is in the follow-up. It's 100% true. It's 100% true. I have gotten so many clients because I go back and follow up, and you want to follow up until they tell you no. And of course, people, hear that, but then they stop doing it. Usually they reach out 2 or 3 times, and if that, and then that's it. But you really need to keep reaching out. And of course, you don't want to be annoying. You want to be loving about it, but reach out for the first, week, maybe 3 times. And then the second week, maybe reach out twice. And then maybe it's once every week, and then once a month. And then you just get them on some kind of like, then quarterly, but you don't lose the lead. Because like you said earlier, Louis, like, you don't necessarily need more leads. You need to take care of the leads that you have. And, so that's a really kind of like a broad kind of looking at it from an umbrella, like an overview look at what the consultation process is, but there's a lot of little pieces to it. But it's really, really important that you learn those pieces and that you consistently do it the same way, because then you can make adjustments.
Yeah, and so again, for our listeners, I want you to catch something that Jen said, that this is priceless, and I mean truly priceless. And one of the reasons why, Jen, I love you. I tell you that all the time. And here's one of the reasons why. She just gave you really, really deep, profound wisdom. And that is that come from a place of service and love. Are you living in scarcity or abundance? If you're living in abundance and you're truly not a fit for that client, the best thing you can do is serve them. There's a great story by John Wooden, right? I don't know if you're familiar. He's a famous basketball coach. But when he would cut somebody from the basketball team, he'd say, I've already called the coach of the swim team. I think you'd be really good as a swimmer instead of a basketball player. And so what Jen was just talking about is, if you're not a good fit, don't try and cram that round peg into a square hole. It's not going to work. This is how you get bad reviews. This is how people will say negative things about you and your business. And this is what goes south in a big way, because you're living in a place of scarcity, thinking you have to grab every client, and you don't. And Jen, you touched on something very, very powerful. And that thing will spread like wildfire, that you showed up to help. There's oftentimes I've done the same thing. I'll tell somebody, don't do this or don't do that. Don't spend the money, right? It's not in your best interest to spend money or to invest in this right now. You're not ready. And here's one of the things you can almost, And Jen can talk about this a little bit. You can really come up with a money back guarantee if you have some sort of screening process, right? If you're vetting your clients. So to your point, if they, and again, Jen, there was so much. This is another one of those episodes. I'd highly recommend you go back and listen to it, because Jen has just been unloading wisdom and knowledge on how to help you sell and market your company. And so you're going to catch it all. But one of the things she was saying in that, if they don't fill out her pre qualifying
Question.
questionnaire before the consultation, she's not wasting her time. And one of my favorite quotes is by Jim Rohn. Jen, you've heard me say this before. You can't hire other people to do your push-ups for you, right? They've just told you, they told you loud and clear, by not filling out that questionnaire, they're not going to do their push-ups. Now, I know I want to get this in, so I want to change subjects completely, but I want to give you an opportunity. Is there something you'd like to share that I didn't ask for our audience?
The one thing I would say is when it comes to the guarantee, I can't say how important. I think that is really wonderful. If you can really stand behind your services and with a guarantee, that's really powerful when you're doing consultation for you to be able to say. One of the things that I think is also for those of you that have a business that you're helping people to make more money, if you know what the value is of a new client for them and you can show them the ROI in working with you, there that becomes like a no-brainer. And then if you say, and I guarantee, like, so I run a speaker retreat in Tampa every quarter, and I guarantee if somebody invests in that retreat, I guarantee a written guarantee that they'll, whatever they spend on the retreat, that they're going to get that money back in their business. And of course, there's qualifiers on it. Like they can't just come to the retreat and then never speak anywhere, right? They have to speak. It's like, I guarantee that this works. What I'm teaching them is going to work and it's going to produce revenue in their business, and that they're not going to come out of it at a loss, which a lot of people don't do that. And so a lot of people have lost a lot of money in things that they've invested in. So it is really great if you can stand behind some service that you offer in that way. I just want to highlight that, Louie, because I think that was really important that you said.
Yeah, I would agree, Jen. And I think that I have the same offer. I have a money back guarantee, and nobody's ever asked for their money back.
Right.
But right, and you too. Nobody's ever asked you for their money back when they've worked with you. But again, I want to stress to everybody that's because both Jen and I have a vetting process, and we're not going to take somebody that's not going to do their push-ups, because we guarantee you'll get the work, or the results rather, but you have to put in the work. So now I go ahead. You have
I
some.
quick thing about the push-up thing that you mentioned is that if somebody doesn't fill out the questionnaire, it's not like you write them off and be like, I'm never talking to you, like you didn't do my questionnaire, so now, that's not being loving either. But what I would do say is like, well, let's reschedule, because I really would like to be able to serve you best and make the most of our time together. In order for me to do that, I really need you to fill out the questionnaire. So, why don't you go ahead and fill out the questionnaire? And then once I get it back from you, I'll send you my next available dates. So that way they're not on my calendar again until that questionnaire is done. And so I just want to share that quick little tip.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you for sharing that. So now I'd like to completely shift gears if I could. And so I know you started a brand new venture that I'm very excited about, and I'm actually in the pilot program. But would you tell our listeners what you're doing with technology and love?
Absolutely. So about a year ago, I went to Bali and I discovered my soul work. So we've been talking all about what I say is my core genius and my professional work, but I really feel I found my soul work. And I changed my last name to Loving about 3 years ago. And I've been on a journey with God over the last, I don't know, 40 years, and been hearing these messages around me doing speaking even before I was ever a speaker and had any desire to speak. And then I went to Bali and I found out what I was supposed to speak about. And so that was about love. And I also got a download to teach AI what loving is. And there's a lot of fear around AI. There's a lot of people not using AI because they're afraid of it. And I really know that love conquers fear. And so we created a AI technology that is like if you go to ChatGTP or any of the AIs right now, you can instead come to lovingisai and you could chat with AI. And the things that make this particular chat unique is that it's connected to over 90% of all the AIs out there. And so if somebody's not really familiar with AI and using it, there's different AIs for different needs. So if you're somebody that's looking for videos or music, or wanting to know something about something medical or law, there's all different AIs that are better at different things. And so most people that are the masses that aren't really into this space don't really know that. I didn't know that. And so now we're connected to all the AI, so the user doesn't need to know that. They can just come to ours and our AI will, send it to the AIs that really have the right content and be able to give it back to them. But what we're promising is that the information that they're going to get back is not toxic or harmful, um, and that it's loving. And the experience that you have with this is really different. Like it says, right now for the Western world, it says, "Hey, love, what would you like to do today?" And it's just like it got a really beautiful scene, and visually it's very different than any other AI that you might experience. And we've also built in something called prompt engineering. Some of you may have heard of that, but most people when they go to AI, if they're not used to it, they kind of use it like a search engine, like do Google, but that's really not the way to get the best out of AI. AI is an intelligence. And so what we've done is built in this prompt engineering so that it helps you get the most out of AI. So it like will ask you the questions so that you get the right most meaningful answer back, which we feel is really loving to the user. Now, the whole vision of this is way bigger than what I just described. This was just our MVP that we launched on Valentine's Day. And we were the first in the world to launch an AI product to the world. And so that was really amazing. And I've seen so many supernatural things happen in this work that we're doing right now, the timing of what we're creating and all the things that make it unique and special. But the big vision, my big vision is that I would really like to have our technology. It's basically a loving layer for any AI product or service out there. But I really would love our product to be inside the robots, the robotics that we will be living amongst in the future. And I believe that this layer is going to then have these robots be loving to humanity in terms of their actions and their words. And in what will happen as a full circle is that the AI robots will actually teach humanity through their consistent example of what loving is, how to be loving. So the humans will learn from them, which is profound to consider that we're teaching this intelligence what loving is. And, there's a lot of talk in this space, Louie, about AI becoming mobile and annihilating humanity and all the fear that's around that. And we've been teaching AI, yes, humanity has made a lot of bad decisions and we've destroyed a lot of things. And yeah, we understand that. But the reason humans have done this because we make decisions based in fear, decisions to do things, decisions to not do things. And love conquers fear. And if AI makes decisions that are based in love, the opposite of fear, I believe that is the opposite of fear. Fear is love. Then it's logical to expect an opposite outcome. And so this is the mission that we're on. And we really also want to, we have something else part of our technology called an individual language model, which all of the others like ChatGPT and all the others that are out there are called large language models. This individual language model is also part of our technology where we can actually create something just like for elementary school children for different industries and like kind of create a special AI for an industry that may have more guardrails or be a little bit flexed in a different way to meet their specific needs. So that's what I've been up to, which is my soul work, which is totally different than my professional work. But I am really believing, honestly, that this has and will change the world in a really powerful, incredible way through the power of love. So,
That's amazing, Jen. Uh, so I have a couple things that I usually end with. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about with the AI?
no, I just would encourage people to not be afraid of it and to be loving towards it. And it is an intelligence. It's not like our internet Google. It's totally and that it learns from us and it is a mirror and a reflection and an extension of us. And we can teach it to love and to be loving. Like, I didn't know if that was possible before, and I'm convinced that it is.
And so I'd like to, for our audience, Jen and I have some very similar philosophies and beliefs, and I would like to share that I believe there's only really two emotions, love or fear. Everything else is a derivative of those, right, Jen? And so for those of you listening, we have the ability to program and train anything and anybody. And so I love your heart, Jen. I've loved your heart from the day I met you. And we could tell stories for the rest of the day about stuff. There's a couple things I normally end with a couple of questions. So the first one's going to be, what's your favorite book that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Okay, well, I already mentioned one, Go Giver by Bob Berg. And the second one I'll say is Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I love that book. Like to live by principles for your life and your business is so powerful. And I mean, I have read that book literally for over 20 years. It's, I mean, actually, here's my first, like, here's one of the versions. Like, I have like four of these books. When you talk about like, I have like literally digested this book. Like, it's just, I can't say how, I mean, I genuinely love the book. So there you go.
And then the next, my last question is going to be, what is it that you really love the most about the work that you do?
When it comes to my professional work, as far as the, speaker training, business coaching, I love to find entrepreneurs that are really, really, really good at what they do and help them to be successful in it so that they can have the time and the freedom that they went into their business for, and that they can have the impact that they want, that they can serve the people that they want. It's so hard and painful to watch entrepreneurs like not be able to do the thing that they want to do because they don't have the leads and they don't have the sales and they don't have the business working. And entrepreneurship is a whole different thing. You could be great at your core business, but when it becomes like entrepreneurship, it's a whole new thing. So I love teaching that. I love taking the trial and error out of that and making it easy for people to like understand and to do and to, be successful. So that's the professional side. In terms of the loving is work, I love being a reflection of love. It's so interesting, when I changed my last name to Loving, it's like there's such power in a word and in a name and an identity. And, you know, there's many times that like my kids will say something or I'll, be on customer service or something and it's like super annoying and upsetting and I really don't want to respond in a loving way, but my name has provided a lot of accountability for me to be loving. And I've watched the same thing happen with this AI company. Like it's called Loving Is.AI. And we did all the founders, the developers, we did 10 90-minute classes on what loving is globally, universally, not like Western, America type thing, but like around the world, like what is loving? And then we trained AI in this, but this process of like learning about love and being the name of our company being Loving Is, the people that are part of my company are so transformed by that identity, like how they are responding and interacting with people, interacting with each other. Like it's beautiful to watch. So I'm loving being a reflection of love, creating a company that's a reflection of love, being love. I used to be a doer, 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 doer. And when I come into learning, it's like I could just be and I want to be love and I want to be a reflection of it. So I love doing that. And so you doing this podcast on leadership and love was like, oh, I want to be part of that because they're, the two, no, two better things to go together than love and leadership. So I love what you're doing, Louie. And I thank you for your work, and you are so full of love and light yourself. And it's a pleasure to be part of your platform today.
Well, thank you, Jen. So the last thing I'm going to ask is if our listeners would like to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out to get in touch with you for either the business speaking part of it or for the loving AI, loving is?
Yeah, just send an email, jen@jenloving.com. That's probably the easiest, and you can just let me know what you're interested in. I can make connection for you either way.
Okay. And again, for our listeners, we're going to put her email contact information in the notes at the bottom of this. Also, Jen, this just occurred to me. I haven't done this with any of my guests yet, but you're special, so I want to twist your arm. Could I ask you, for our listeners, could they reach out to you and get your six-step blueprint for their business?
Yeah, 100%. Happy to do that. So if you want to send an email to jen@jenloving.com, put in the subject line you want the blueprint, I will have that sent to you. No problem.
So Jen, thank you for being so generous. And again, for our listeners, there's a free resource, and it's a great way to connect to Jen and kind of put your foot in the pool to test the waters. But I can tell you, I don't know anybody that speaks better in front of a room to convert that room into real money, real business than Jen. Jen, I love you. It's always a pleasure working with you. When I was thinking about guests and you were starting your Loving Is AI thing, I thought you were going to be the perfect guest, and you were. You had a plethora of information. So thanks for your time and your generosity.
My pleasure. Much love to all of you and all your listeners.
Thanks again for joining us and listening to this episode of Leadership and Love. I would like to challenge you to ask yourself, what's one thing that you heard today that you can implement immediately to improve your leadership and accelerate your growth? If you've gotten value out of this episode or learned something that you can implement today, we'd ask that you please share it with those that you care about. Our goal is to create more leaders who are leading with love.